Encourage students to become more autonomous learners. According to constructivist and humanistic theory, which we discuss later in this chapter, students should, under the right circumstances, be able to work more independently of the teacher than they typically do. One important condition that paves the way for students becoming more autonomous is the way in which teachers interact with students. Students in one study, which were more likely to feel as if they were in control of their own learning when teachers engaged in such behaviors as giving students time to work on a task in their own ways, giving students the opportunity to talk, encouraging students to complete tasks, listening to students, and being responsive to students' questions. By contrast, student autonomy was more likely to be negatively related to such teacher behaviors as giving students the solutions to problems or the answers to questions, giving students commands and directions, telling students they should or should not do something, and asking students such controlling questions as, "Can you do it the way I showed you?" If you still believe, despite findings cited in the preceding paragraph, that school-age children simply don't have the emotional maturity and cognitive skills necessary to direct more of their own learning, a program for 8th grade students in Radnor, Pennsylvania called Surroundings has illustrated its feasibility. The program is built around a set of questions that students have identified as being of interest and importance to them. Students then help the teacher develop the curriculum, study methods, and assessments. In line with humanistic theory, the first goal of every school year is the development of safe and trusting relationships among students and between the students and the teacher. This goal is accomplished by having pairs of students interview each other and then introduce the other student to the class, by having students interview the teacher, and by using cooperative games. Then the teachers, who act as coordinators of the students' efforts, train students to ask meaningful and insightful questions. Why do we eat breakfast? Who decided which foods would be breakfast foods? Do people in all cultures eat the same foods for breakfast? That flow from two general questions. What questions and concerns do you have about yourself? And what questions and concerns do you have about the world? Working in small groups, students examine their own questions as well as those of their classmates, identify common questions that will be the subject of a large group discussion, and write their questions on large sheets that are posted on a wall and viewed by the other students in the class. After viewing all the lists and discussing common themes and their importance, the students create a prioritized list of themes to study throughout the year, such as violence in our culture, medical issues affecting our lives, and surviving alien environments. Students then develop a timeline for studying the selected topics, block out time periods on the calendar, and join a small group that is interested in one of these topics. The challenge of being a constructivist teacher. Constructivist-oriented approaches to teaching run counter to the dominant teacher-directed approach in which the teacher transmits established, accumulated knowledge to students through the lecture and demonstration, and students incorporate that knowledge largely through drill and practice exercises. Evidence that teacher-directed instruction is still the most popular approach comes from a large-scale observational study of over 2,500 first, third, and fifth grade classrooms. Almost all of the instruction these students received, just over 91%, was in the form of either whole class instruction or individual seat work. Students in first and third grades received 10 times as much instruction in basic skills as in problem solving and reasoning. Fifth graders, the ratio was 5 to 1. Consequently, teachers interested in adopting a constructivist approach will have to successfully negotiate a set of challenges that Mark Winchell describes as conceptual, pedagogical, cultural, and political. The conceptual challenge is to fully understand the theoretical foundation on which constructivism rests and to reconcile current pedagogical beliefs with constructivist beliefs. This involves, for example, understanding the difference between cognitive and social constructivism and such concepts as cognitive apprenticeship, scaffolding, situated learning, and negotiated meaning. A solid grasp of constructivist theory will also help teachers avoid misconceptions. For instance, that direct instruction can never be used, that students must always be physically and socially active to learn, that all ideas and interpretations offered by students are equally valid, and that constructivist teaching avoids rigorous assessment practices. The pedagogical challenge has several facets. Constructivist teachers need to understand how different students think, how complete each student's knowledge is about a subject, how accurate that knowledge is, and how aware students are about the state of their own knowledge. Teachers must know how to use a variety of methods to support understanding during problem-based activities. These methods include modeling, providing prompts, probes, and suggestions that differ in their explicitness, providing problem-solving rules of thumb, and using technology to organize and represent information. Teachers must guide students to choose meaningful projects or issues to investigate that are sufficiently complex, intellectually challenging, and related to the theme of the particular subject under study. Teachers have to teach students how to work productively in collaborative activities, even though some students may be uninterested in or even opposed to working with others. Teachers need to have a deep enough understanding of a subject to be able to guide students who become puzzled by an observation to an explanation, as in the case of students who wonder why seedlings grow taller under weaker light than under stronger light. Last, constructivist teachers need to know how to use a wide range of alternative assessment devices, such as interviews, observations, student journals, peer reviews, research reports, art projects, the building of physical models, and participation in plays, debates, and dances. The cultural challenge faced by teachers interested in adopting a constructivist approach pertains to the implicit classroom norms that govern the behavior of teachers and students. As noted, the dominant approach to instruction is a didactic one in which established effects and procedures are transmitted from an expert to novices. The classroom culture that flows from this model is one in which teachers talk most of the time while students sit, are quiet and attentive, do seat work, and take tests. A constructivist classroom, on the other hand, is characterized by inquiry, collaboration among students, use of the teacher as a resource, explanations of point of view and solutions to problems, and attempts to reach consensus about answers and solutions. The major challenge for teachers is to recognize that their beliefs about what constitutes an ideal classroom are likely to have been shaped by their experiences as students in traditional classrooms. The political challenge is to convince those who control the curriculum and influence teaching methods, school board members, administrators, other teachers, and parents, that constructivist teaching will satisfy state learning standards, is consistent with the content of high-stakes tests, and will help students meaningfully learn the key ideas that underlie various subjects. Should you run into this problem, you might cite a research study or two that supports constructivist teaching. For example, third graders in Germany whose teachers used a constructivist approach scored higher on a test of mathematical word problems and at the same level on a test of arithmetic computation problems as third graders whose teachers used the traditional direct transmission approach. The technology section that follows presents some additional ideas for embedding learning in realistic settings. Using technology to support cognitive approaches to instruction. As educators begin to understand and address cognitive learning theories, the focus of technology is shifting from remediating learner skill deficiencies and rehearsing basic skills to finding ways to help the learner build, extend, and amplify new knowledge. Your willingness and readiness to use today's technology for this purpose is likely to be partly a function of the extent to which you use computer technology to meet personal and professional goals. 4th and 8th grade teachers who reported higher levels of classroom technology use and personal computer use were more likely to use constructivist teaching practices than their peers who reported lower levels of technology use. Helping students process information. An information processing approach to instruction uses technology to minimize the cognitive demands of a task, to help learners form schemas or patterns of information, to extend or augment thinking in new directions, and to supply information overviews and memory cues. The programs for outlining and note-taking mentioned in Chapter 9 on social cognitive theory are consistent with this approach, as are electronic encyclopedias, interactive databases that contain conceptual resources such as timelines, information maps, and overviews, and concept mapping software, help students organize their knowledge and ideas. Discovery and exploration environments. Computers are not just tools to transmit or represent information for the learner, they also provide environments that allow for discoveries and insights. In such an exploratory environment, students might explore ocean life or find the ideal ecosystem for a Tyrannosaurus rex dinosaur. Exploratory tools for learning math include Logo, the geometric supposer, and the geometrator's sketchpad, all of which have been shown to help students construct meaningful knowledge networks about geometric concepts and reduce the usual rote memorizing of rules and terms. Another exploratory tool, GenScope, was designed to help students better understand the principles of genetics. 2 studies illustrate the benefits to using this program. In the first, high school students in technical biology and general life science courses performed significantly better than did students in classes without the program on a test of genetic reasoning. In the second study, high school honors biology students with little prior knowledge of the subject showed significant gains in conceptual understanding, whereas students who already knew something about genetics did not. Guided learning. Although students can use modeling programs and simulations to plan experiments, taking measurements, analyze data, and graph findings, there is still a need for teacher scaffolding and guidance in support of the learning process. In these guided learning environments, teachers might help students set goals, ask questions, encourage discussions, and provide models of problem-solving processes. Such teachers provide a clear roadmap of the unit as at the beginning, clear expectations and sequencing of activities, continued reinforcement and guidance, teacher modeling, opportunities for students to practice problem-solving steps, reflection on learning, and regular checking and sharing of student progress. Note how this approach combines elements of the behavioral and social cognitive approaches. One guided learning environment, the Higher Order Thinking Skills program, focuses on higher order thinking skills among at-risk youths in grades 4 through 8. HOTS was designed around active learning, Socratic questioning, and reflection activities in using computers. It attempts to improve 4 key thinking processes: metacognition, inferential thinking, transfer of learning, and synthesis, or combining information from different sources into a coherent whole. Instead of the rote computer-based drills that these students would normally receive, they are prompted to reflect on their decision-making process while using computer tools. Teachers do not give away the answers, but instead draw out key concepts by questioning students or telling them to go back and read the information on the computer screen. The developer of HOTS, Stanley Pogro, calls this controlled floundering, or leading students into a frustration so that they have to reflect on the information on the screen to solve a problem. In effect, the learning dialogues and conversations between the teacher and students are the keys to learning here, not student use of the computer, as small group discussion allows students to compare strategies and reflect on those that work. The main reason for beginning this program and this type of instruction in 4th grade is that for essentially the first time, students are confronted with tasks that require them to create, synthesize, and generalize ideas. Establishing this foundation now, Pogro claims, leads to higher levels of achievement later without having to spend a lot of time reteaching content and engaging in test preparation. Problem and project-based learning. Another way to implement constructivist trends in education is to use technology for problem-based or project-based learning. These are very similar instructional methods that require learners to develop solutions to real-life problems or to construct answers to such complex questions as how bacteria affect people's health and what are the sources and solutions to water pollution. Computer-based problem-solving programs typically provide students with story problems, laboratory problems, or investigation problems. Story problem programs are usually tutorials and are very much like the math story problems you probably encountered in school. Laboratory programs are typically simulations of laboratory science programs such as chemistry or biology. Investigation problems are set in realistic environments, micro-worlds, and may involve such varied subject areas as astronomy, social studies, environmental science, and anthropology. When using PBL with technology, students can plan and organize their own research while working collaboratively with others. Although PBL has its roots in medical and business school settings, it has been successfully adapted to the elementary, middle, and high school grades. Problem solving and project-based approaches that are based on constructivist principles and are most likely to foster meaningful learning will do the following. Encourage students to be active learners, engaging in such behaviors as making observations, manipulating objects, and recording the results of their manipulations. Encourage students to reflect on their experiences and begin to construct mental models of the world. Provide students with complex tasks that are situated in real-world settings and that will take several weeks to complete. Require students to state their learning goals, the decisions they make, the strategies they use, and the answers they formulate. Require students to work in cooperative groups in which there is a considerable amount of social interaction. Technology is also being used to support project-based learning. Project-based learning provides structure by giving students a project or a problem along with project goals and deadlines. A study conducted in Holland with 16 and 17-year-old high school students illustrates this approach. The students were given 5 hours to write an essay of approximately 750 words on how the behavior of Dutch youths changed during the 1950s and 60s. Although the students worked in pairs, they did so at their own computers and interacted by means of a chat facility and a shared draft of the essay that each one could edit. They were supplied with such computer-based resources as excerpts from textbooks, interpretations of historians, photos, tables, and interviews. Situated learning. As you may recall from Chapter 10, situated learning or situated cognition is the concept that knowledge is closely linked to the environment in which it is acquired. The more true to life the task is, the more meaningful the learning will be. Technology can play a key role in providing access to a wide variety of real-world learning situations. For instance, computer-based instructional technology, such as these things, can apprentice students into real-life learning and problem-solving settings by providing access to authentic data and the tools to manipulate the data. One project that embodied the concept of situated learning was conducted with elementary grade students in a Northern Ireland school and a Republic of Ireland school. Called the Author Online Project. Students in both schools read a book called The Cinnamon Tree by Aubrey Flegg and wrote a book report. The students then posted their reports on a portion of the Northern Ireland Network for Education website. As new reports appeared, they were read by all of the students and discussed. At this point, the author got involved by posting his reactions to each student's report. The students discussed his comments in class, either individually or in small groups, composed a response. At one point, the author adopted the persona of the book's main character, a 13-year-old girl, thereby giving the students the rather unique opportunity to interact with the fictional character.